What is up? Good morning and welcome to DFS and Chill, Club Fantasy's weekly DFS show. I am your host, Ryan Weisse, and as always, nobody cares. I'm going to kick it over to my co-host, a woman who needs absolutely no introduction, though you probably need help saying her name, Kyra Wiaterowski. My friend, how are you this morning?
I'm doing good, Ryan. If you're Chris Robbins, just a reminder, Kyra. Not Kyra, never Kyra, never will be Kyra, always Kyra. I'm doing good. I'm going to be a little bit, I wouldn't say I'm going to be a little bit bored this Sunday. A little bit of a boring slate and no Eagles on it. Can't talk about my Eagles today. So I am happy to have my guest here, though, Eric. Eric, he is a really great cause. I started my first Pros with Joe's tournament league this year. I'm really excited about it. Not off to a super great start, but but it's only week one. Week one's always crazy, always provides us with the entertainment that we sometimes want, sometimes don't want. Looking for things to even itself out here in week two. So Eric, if you'd like to introduce yourself, just tell people a little bit about you.
Yeah, I'm Eric. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyNav. Getting better at this every day. I contribute for drroto.com. I contribute for goingfor2.com. I contribute for the football diehards. All of that will roll up onto my personal Twitter. And then, like Kyra mentioned, we are now set off into year 3 of Pros with Joe's. For those of you that aren't familiar, basically every one of our 56 teams is an industry expert and a everyday player who donated to that expert's charity for a chance to win their way into the league. So 56 teams, all of them a set of co-managers. We continue raising money throughout the season. There are a few ways that you can contribute. If you go to our website, proswithjoes.com, that will take you to our donor page where we will raise money all the way through week 18, and that will go to the Winning Pros charity. We also have some merch up there on our shop. All of that money actually goes over to Fantasy Cares, and you can gear up with some cool Pros with Joe swag. So proswithjoes.com, Pros with Joes on Twitter.
Yeah. I was so excited to join the league this year. And I'm so happy that the Joe that I get is this gentleman. He's a 2-time cancer survivor. He really deserved to be able to do it. And we had a great time, like doing the draft together, like corresponding. He was drafting another draft while we were doing this one, and he trusted me. So I hope that we could take it home for him this year.
What an awesome story. And yeah, folks, if you are not familiar with Pros with Joes, first and foremost, Eric, thank you for your professionalism. I didn't even have to prompt you to talk about your thing. You just absolutely knocked it out of the park right away. I love when I have people who are well seasoned in pitching their product right away on the show. But I was able to do Pros with Joes the very first year. And Kyra, a similar story, not a cancer survivor, but I got to meet someone who was a big fan of the fantasy footballers at the time. And I was still writing with the footballers out at the time. And I still chat with that person. So a lot of really cool stuff that goes on with that tournament. It's a very unique opportunity that Eric, you've put together. My favorite part of the show, based on everything we have, is we have 3 last names that absolutely get butchered every single time I see them mentioned. Eric, I've heard you referred to as Romoff more times than I can count, even though I put your name correct in every show sheet. My co-host called you Romoff when he was previewing this show. So.
Yeah, that extra syllable has been sneaking its way in there my entire life.
I can imagine as even worse so since Black Widow became a thing.
Yeah, now the questions really ramp up. They're like, wait a second, the Romanovs?
Yeah, exactly.
My name. It's all good. Kyra mentioned it. If I'm being entirely honest, before we actually met in real life, Kyra was Kyra to me. So I butchered my fair share of names. So turnabout's fair play.
You're not the first, Eric. You won't be the last. I make the joke to Chris Robbins because he is consistently, I've probably known Chris now for 3 years, and he still calls me Kyra. He's been on my show a million times. I've met him in person.
First guest ever.
Several times.
Still just saying your name.
He just refuses to let my name be what it actually is. So it's just like an ongoing joke.
I said all love with Chris. So, But yeah. Kyra. Anyway, so guys, if you're new to the show, this show focuses 100% on DFS. We are going to talk main slate. We're going to talk cash. We're going to talk tourney. Kyra, as everybody knows, is the queen of cash, so she's going to give you a lot of cash advice. Eric's going to cover the tourney plays. If you have redraft questions, I will be answering them into the chat. If you're watching us on Twitter, we don't get your questions in case you haven't picked up on that yet, so you should go over on YouTube. But more importantly, I will be answering redraft questions in the chat. If you happen to ask a position-specific question and it fits into what we're getting, I might get these two to answer it, but you're probably just going to get my answer. So that is it. As I mentioned, we are covering main slate, which means no Chargers, Chiefs, Bears, Packers, Titans, Bills, Vikings or Kyra. Where did that come from?
Jeez,
Kyra's
Eagles. It's not even Kyra anymore. I'm Kyra.
I say you guys got me all wrong. But as you guys are fully aware, when you're building your lineup, we're going to start with quarterback, and we call this segment safe versus upside, because normally in cash you're looking for a very safe play. For GPP you're looking for an upside play. I'm going to start with the guest this time. So Eric, what kind of high upside plays are you looking for in GPP this week?
Yeah, so there are really two names that come to mind for me. I guess sort of the safer of the two would be Kyla Murray. He's in that game against the Las Vegas Raiders that everybody wants to get into. But I kind of get the sense that with him being the price king, being the most expensive quarterback on the board, he's probably going to go a little bit under-owned relative to where he should be. So starting a lot of my GPP builds with Kyla Murray and looking for a couple guys to stack with, a couple guys to run back. We'll talk about some of those names later.
Yeah.
On the kind of more upside or maybe more contrarian play, I'm a big fan of Tua this week. Okay. We look at this Ravens secondary that's absolutely decimated, right? They are going to be without Marlon Humphrey. They're very likely going to be without Marcus Peters. So you think about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle being able to run against practice squatters, and they can have a really nice day, and Tua's not getting really any attention in terms of ownership.
Yeah, and he's low down there in price, if I remember correctly, as well.
Yes,
so that kind of helps him. Where Kyler scares me a little bit. I don't mean to go against your take, but with him being high price and not great last week. But again, in GPP, sometimes you're looking for contrarian. You're looking for that upside play that nobody else is thinking about you doing. So
that is precisely what I'm banking on. I feast on fear, right?
I love it. And Kyra, you went a high and a low route for us in
yeah. Well, in cash, we feast on. We do not feast on fear. We like safe. So
yeah.
So somebody that I like in cash this week, I know he's going to be expensive, but just looking at the main slate quarterbacks here, not a ton of upside plays, a lot of pocket passer guys. Kyla Murray, of course, he has the ability to, finish as QB1 on any given week. I know that his situation isn't great, but the over-under, I can understand that completely. I think this game is going to be a sneaky game that I'm about to talk about is the Miami versus Baltimore game. In years past, Miami haven't really given teams much of a fit, but, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill looked absolutely fantastic to begin the week. I think what Mike McDaniels is doing over there for Miami is really good. They're going to be a tough team to play against. And even though on paper, you might say that Lamar Jackson's matchup is tough going up against Miami's secondary, I think that Lamar Jackson has the highest ceiling out of anyone on this slate, and he also has one of the safer floors. It was a little bit shocking to see him rush for only 17 yards last week. Not really a Lamar Jackson-esque kind of performance, but I could see him bouncing back in this one here on giving us that safe rushing floor. I think that since the secondary is a little tougher, he's going to have to make more plays with his legs because he doesn't have a super strong wide receiver core, even though, Mark Andrews is one of the best tight ends in the game and Rashad Bateman has come on. I think that Lamar is going to have to play a little bit of hero ball, but that's why he makes it a safe play for me, although expensive. Somebody that I like as a value this week is going to be, weirdly, Carson Wentz. I mean, he came as a surprise to us last week. I don't think we expected. Oh, yeah, we did not expect Carson Wentz to be the QB3 on our bingo card, but that's who it was, And in this game, with not a lot of, like I said, this slate, not a ton of potential. There's really low, not very high over-unders on this one. I think that the Detroit-Washington game could be a sneaky shootout. And I think that Carson Wentz could go back-to-back weeks of a good performance. The secondary for the Detroit Lions, still not very good. Jeff Okudah going up against Terry McLaurin is one of my favorite matchups this week. So I would like to go with Carson Wentz as a low dollar amount. Was going to be Trey Lance, but the game weather, again, kind of scares me. I know that Trey Lance still could get it done with his legs, so he's still someone that I'd consider. But I just feel like at this point, Carson Wentz is a little bit safer.
And that makes a lot of sense. Kyra, I wanted to just take a quick second. We talked a lot about this last week, but do you want to give a quick rundown of the kind of differences between cash and GPP play?
Yeah, so here's like an example for me as he gave his the Tua example. Me and Jordan talked about Joe Burrow being a tournament play. So everyone's going to be off of that game just because I think that they feel like, well, the Cowboys aren't going to do much. What's really Burrow going to have to do? But even last week, he was getting sacked a million times. He still put up a ton of points. So in tournaments, you want to get different. So Joe Burrow would be a great tournament play because he's going to be super low owned. He has the ability to put up a lot of points. So that's somebody you're going to want in a tournament game. Whereas in cash, it's okay to be a little bit more chalky. Like Carson Wentz probably is going to be a popular play because of his performance last week, because of his matchup. A lot of people are going to be playing him, and that's okay because in cash, you only want to score just as much as half the people playing. Like you want to be on the same page as those people. You don't need to put in, well, you definitely shouldn't put in Joe Burrow in a cash lineup because it's just not as safe of a play. He has a safe floor, he has a safe ceiling. I get that, but he's not your ideal cash game quarterback, as opposed to somebody like Lamar Jackson and Wentz, who's going to be a lot more owned in these games, and they provide just as much floor and ceiling as he could.
Gotcha.
So it's really the like I don't want to say ownership. It's really the rostership that you're looking at for cash.
Perfect. Eric, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean that's really it, right? On the cash side, you're trying to identify targets where you can predict their output based on their role with the highest degree of accuracy. Whereas GPP is that plus you need to find a place or two to get different. And shout out Kyra, that Dallas Cincinnati game in general is going to be largely overlooked. So all of those guys,
Jamar Chase and Showtime, like let's go.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like based on game script, based on public sentiment, I think their point total for that game dropped like 9 points since opening.
Yeah.
So basically, the public and the betting money is telling us that everyone's off that game. So kind of like Ryan was saying with Kyla Murray, anytime that there's public sentiment or signals that people are fading or worried about a play, it's at least worth a closer look to try to understand, can this player get to the high end of their range? And if they do, I'm in the 99th percentile as one of the few people that rostered him.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, Jamar Chase is someone that could break the slate. He has that ability to do that. So I really do like him this week. And last time they saw Cooper Rush, I mean, he tries to move that ball down the field. I know that the Dallas Cowboys in general look bad. They even look bad with Dak playing the game, but it could be one of those little sneaky games that could give you big leverage in a tournament. So.
And Eric, you said something very smart, and I know it's smart because you're the second guest in a row to say it, is when you're talking about getting different, don't think about making your whole lineup different. You're looking for one or two get different type plays. Don't get too crazy with it. Yeah. So you still want to pepper
lottery picks,
Yeah.
You can't just go team all pivot, but finding a player or two that's going to get you leverage, or finding a combination of players that is not going to be built in a similar way. That's really the path to sustainable success in GPPs.
Perfect segue. Let's talk about combinations of players. So for running backs, I have these guys each give you combos they would use in cash or GPP. Kyra, we're going to start with you with cash. And because it's Kyra, and because everybody tunes in to see Kyra gave us far more than two options. So Kyra, let's talk about your favorite combos.
Yeah, of course. So in cash, I think it's really safe to start most of your lineups with Saquon Barkley. We saw how great he was last week. We saw everything you wanted to see. You saw his explosiveness back. You saw heavy usage. He led the team in targets, so he was using the passing game. He's getting high volume as a running back. He's the team. He's the best playmaker. And Brian Daboll, I think he knows that, and he's going to get him super involved. I know he's super chalky this week because, amongst the top 4 running backs on DraftKings, it's Jonathan Taylor at an ungodly amount. Then you got CMC, Alvin Kamara, who's now was just listed as out. And then it's Saquon Barkley. And with the level of production that he puts up, I mean, you could save yourself $2,000 and come off of Jonathan Taylor, or $1,000 come off of CMC and go with Saquon Barkley. Especially going up against Carolina, who just last week got absolutely ripped apart by Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. So the rushing defense, not very scary over there. I do like Saquon Barkley a lot as a high dollar amount player. And I also do like Joe Mixon in that price range as well. Just because, again, with that Bengals game, you expect them to be the favorite. Obviously, I think that they could lead for most of that game. So the heavy usage that Joe Mixon sees, he could be a safe play for cash. If we're going a little bit cheaper route, Darrell Henderson is one of my favorite plays. He saw himself some very good usage, and I think that he's still priced so low because I don't think that people really know what to make of the Akers and Henderson situation yet. Probably unsure if Akers was just being eased in or something, but Henderson, in my opinion, looked like the better back. I predicted this going into the season, and he's priced just way too low, going up against the Atlanta Falcons. easily a favorite cash play for me is Darrell Henderson. And you got to take opportunity with Jeff Wilson Jr. Obviously the San Francisco 49ers lost Elijah Mitchell last week. And this is something that you do a lot in cash games is when you take the backup running back as an opportunity, they're going to be a cheap play. I know Shanahan's a bit scary. We could sit there and think that it's going to be Jeff Wilson Jr. this whole time. And, out comes TDP to take all the way the touches. So he's a little bit risky in a sense, but in a bad weather game, I think that they can lean on the run and Jeff Wilson Jr. can pay off for cash.
Eric, before we jump over to you, I want to say hello to Faith, but then I want to immediately rescind that hello as she points out that she's only here to talk to Kyra.
Hi, Faith.
So, yeah. Kyra has no bigger fan than Faith.
I love my Faith.
So, Eric, you agree on Saquon, so feel free to keep talking about Saquon, but I'm going to question you a little bit on Najee because Najee worries me a little bit. So I could see Najee more as a GPP play, but you think he's a safe cash play?
Yeah, so to be fair, and going behind the curtain a little bit, I was a little tardy in getting my answers into the show sheet, and Kyra swooped in and took all 4 of my cash plays for the week.
Oh my goodness. Well, let me tell you, don't ever force anything. And I need to be more clear about this when I do the show sheet. It's okay if you guys agree. Yeah. If you disagree, we'll talk about it. But if you agree, don't force yourself into Najee Harris. No.
I'll still make the case for Najee, right? But seeing those 4 names on there, some combination of those 4 will very much so be the duo that I trot out in my cash game builds. Have to mention Saquon. I mean, he's absolutely way too cheap at $7,300 given his workload and his usage. And it's kind of a similar line of thinking with Najee Harris. I mean, he's down basically at $6,000, $6,200, and you're looking at a guy that got 75% of the opportunity share for the running backs on this team and is still very involved in the pass game. He's still very involved in the red zone. He's number 5 in red zone touches. He had 2 goal line touches last week. So basically, when Pittsburgh makes their way into the red zone, it's absolutely Najee Harris season. And if you think about a $6,000 price tag, I mean, his path to paying that off is very, very clear, right? His prop lines for rushing yards are right around 60 yards. His receiving lines, depending on which book or which game you're playing, floating around 20. So pretty good chance that he ends up around 80 yards, hauls in a couple of balls, and all of a sudden he's right at 2x. So I think for Najee, it's much more about his role and his path to getting to value in a cash context.
And that's fair because you're going to chase volume in that situation. I'm just worried, with the foot injury and everything else that's going on there. But you made me feel a little bit better about it. Let's just move into your tourney picks at running back.
Yeah, so going a little bit different. I teased one of these up at the top. First and foremost, Travis Etienne, absolutely buying the bounce back. His price tag is ridiculous. He's in the mid 5Ks. While James Robinson had the bigger fantasy week in week number 1, Travis Etienne actually outtouched him 36-34, and he had a drop touchdown and an overthrow touchdown. So Travis Etienne very much so is a big part of this offense. He's going to continue to see high value looks out of the backfield. And at least I'm hoping that some people saw the box score from week 1 and maybe move off of him a little bit. I know he got plenty of love on Twitter this week, so maybe not. The other name that I wanted to mention, or I will be targeting specifically in my Arizona Kyler runbacks, is Josh Jacobs. I want to get into this game. We look at what Las Vegas is doing. It seems pretty apparent that they are planning to run him into the ground and basically leave him for dead at the end of the season. I don't think he sees another contract in Las Vegas. So, while it didn't look spectacular on the field at any given point, I mean, he's still up there. He's right around 65% opportunity share. If we're expecting the Raiders to be scoring a fair amount, then he should be in a favorable position. And specifically, using him as the run back on my Arizona stacks, I think ends up being a very unique roster construction, as that is the coveted game, but a different angle in terms of getting into it.
And I'm gonna let you continue with the run back. Oh, never mind. Kyra added it. I was gonna say Kyra didn't have anything added when I first looked this morning, so I thought you were the only one who had one. So we'll get to it at the end of the show. So never mind. I'm not gonna let you continue. Kyra, talk about your turning point.
Yeah, sorry. It's because for some reason I always miss that because I have to scroll down farther and my laziness just.
Oh, you're good. It's just if you were gonna skip it, I was gonna let him talk about it now to save time. But.
No, but I love the Josh Jacobs call as far as that goes. Just because I think that most people are just on the pass catchers for the Raiders, and I think that people just. in the fantasy football community don't dislike Josh Jacobs in general because he dislikes us too. So it's just like one of those things.
It's only fair.
And with the usage, like you have the other McDaniels as a coach, so it's just like he's weary, but I like him for a tournament play, no doubt. Somebody I'd like to get different with is Antonio Gibson, another guy that's not necessarily well liked by the fantasy football community or his own team, but last week he went pretty crazy. He had 21 touches, 130 total yards, and finished as RB10. Pretty good. He doesn't really have much competition. I guess JD McKissick you can call his competition, but going up against the Detroit Lions this week, they've allowed the third most rushing yards and most fantasy points to the Eagles last week. And I think that he's in an easy spot to just smash his opportunity. I think he's priced a little too cheap. And I think he's a way to get different because most people are probably going to be paying up to, maybe go with just a little more safe, I guess, options. I don't know that they're going with Antonio Gibson. So I like him for GPP. Another one is just a late ad is going to be Nyheim Hines. I think with losing Michael Pittman Jr. this week, I think that some people want to, go for Paris Campbell. They want to do the Ashton Doolins of the world and Alec Pierce's. But honestly, I think that we're just going to see a whole hell of a lot more Nyheim Hines and going up against the Jaguars rushing defense. And they're just bad over like the secondary is actually not too bad, I guess. But their rushing defense is terrible. And I could see him having a great day today, especially because a lot of people are going to be on Jonathan Taylor. Go Nyheim Hines for cheaper.
So I'm going to bring up a user question from our buddy Austin. Austin asks how we're feeling about Swift. I'm going to get this out of the way. I can't imagine Swift is even a consideration in cash lineups. So Eric, I'm going to start with you. How are you feeling about Swift as sneaky tournament play with the snap counts and all that fun stuff circling?
Yeah, this feels like one of those fun situations where whichever way we decide to call it, the opposite thing is going to happen, right? I have a lot of exposure to DeAndre Swift in the dynasty game, so I'm suffering the reporting of some sort of snap management heading into week 2. For me, this is really the second most coveted game on the slate, so I'm trying to find unique ways to get into it. So in my larger fields, my 20 max or 50 max entries, I'll certainly have some shares of DeAndre Swift. I won't feel great about it, but I at least want to be have him in the player pool, but specifically trying to get underweight to the fields.
Okay. And then Kyra, you can talk about him in tournament play, but am I right? You can't play DeAndre Swift in cash this week, right?
Yeah, no, it's too risky with the reports that are coming out. I would just probably avoid, but I mean, in tournament, maybe Jamal Williams is kind of intriguing if that's the case, because we've seen him be capable as a 3-down back and he gets all that goal line work. So I wouldn't hate it, plugging him into one of my lineups. If you could do one of those entries where you have a couple lineups to build. I mean, it can't hurt. I think he'll be low owned.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Swift. I hate it. I hate it for redraft. It sucks. I pretty much in every single draft that I have went Swift in the second round. If I didn't go Swift, I went Barkley. So I just too early to deal with this stuff. My God, we're just getting our footing. Like, come on.
I love that Eric hit it on the head, though. Eric, you said whatever we think is going to happen, the opposite's going to happen, because sometimes you hear snap count and they're only used in the red zone and they score 3 touchdowns. And then other times you hear snap count and they're only used between the 20s and do absolutely nothing for you. So it's just absolutely bad. Before we jump into wide receivers, I like to get user questions when we can. Guys, this is clearly a redraft question because it deals off main slate, but it also deals with Kyra's Eagles, so why not get involved with it? Devonta Smith, Tyler Boyd. Smith with the big goose egg last week has everybody quite scared off. So Kyra, where are we leaning in this in a redraft standpoint?
Yeah, just because of the game script for the Bengals, I don't think that we're going to see Tyler Boyd get a ton of work, especially because T. Higgins looks like he's good to go. So I'd be more focused on playing Chase and Higgins. I wouldn't fit Tyler Boyd in there, especially not over Devontae Smith. I know that people are a little scared off because, yeah, he did lay the goose egg, and that sucks. And no one really wants to get fooled twice. That's for sure. Yeah. But like I said on the show last week, Jalen Hurts reassured Devonta Smith that he was going to get his, and I don't think we can expect to see him lay a goose egg every week, and that, A.J. Brown's going to get this 45% target share only every week. That's going to change. That's, one of those week 1 things that I think we'll be able to bury after this week. So Devonta Smith.
Eric, you feel the same?
Yeah, go Birds here. It's absolutely Devonta Smith.
That just warms
obviously,
Kyra's heart.
Should be a fun game too, but much better game than the Bengals Dallas game. I'll tell you that.
And that's the thing, right? Like, you're looking at best-case scenario, the third pass-catching option, probably the fourth behind Joe Mixon for a Bengals team that should be comfortably in control. And Devonta Smith, despite not catching any passes, he ran a route on 100% of Jalen Hurts' dropback. So his role in this offense is very well secure. Some of those targets are a little bit more on target, a little bit more accurate. Or if we see coverage start to roll more towards AJ Brown's side, Devonta Smith is out there running routes, and he will absolutely have a better performance than the goose egg and a flex-worthy performance in week 2.
Yeah, you would also have to think that the Vikings, looking at last week, are like, yeah, we need to make sure that we shut down AJ Brown. If he's going to get that big of a target share, then that is going to be a focus for them. And I could see the attention being heavily on AJ Brown. They want to eliminate him, and that leaves other guys open. And Devonta Smith is a more than capable wide receiver when open.
And the Vikings are in a unique situation that they have an alpha wide receiver, so they can practice this week focusing on shutting down an alpha wide receiver. So they're in a very unique situation where we could see some of these second wide receivers, your Adam Thielens and even your Devonta Smiths, have big weeks in what should be a high-scoring game. Eric, I know Kyra's going to end up piling on a bunch of wide receivers on me, so I'm going to let you get started. So with the wide receivers, what I typically have you guys do is give me one cheap, one middle, one expensive option. No matter what kind of game you're playing, you probably need to start 3 wide receivers. So Eric, for tourney, obviously you're going to lean a little bit, get different. I love your top option because I think people are going to be scared off of the price. But talk to me about your tourney plays. One cheap, one middle, one expensive.
Yeah, so I'll go in that order. I'll build the suspense for the agreement on my top option. Yeah. My cheap option is Curtis Samuel, mid 4Ks. We're looking at a guy that saw 11 targets last week. He hauled in 8 of them for 55 yards. His ADOT was literally less than a yard. So when your quarterback is Carson Wentz, that's a good thing, right? The closer you are to Carson Wentz, the higher the likelihood that your pass will be on target. And very specifically, I mean, again, this is a game that we want to get into, right? Detroit and the Commanders. This is a game that I think a lot of people are going to be looking at the splashy play from week 1, Jahan Dotson, who's priced fairly similarly and probably air that way. So I'll go with the safe role of someone that should see 8, 10, 11 targets again this week in an offense that is absolutely going to be looking to press the ball in a game that should score up. In terms of my middle option, a lot of this has to do with pricing. This isn't a game that I'm necessarily excited to get into, but you look at Michael Thomas for the New Orleans Saints. I mean, he very much so stepped right back into that dependable high volume role that he left when we saw him all those years ago. Hauled in five of his passes for 57 yards. He had 2 receiving touchdowns. I think that probably regresses a bit here in what should be a pretty slow game. But he's $5,800. Like, he is such a value at that price tag. He's got so many paths to returning value at 5.8K. And then my high option is the Price King. We're looking at essentially a $10,000 Cooper Kupp. People generally don't like to roster the most expensive player on the board. A lot of people are out there banging the drum for an Allen Robinson rebound week. I couldn't be more out on that concept. Really, the favorable matchup for players facing off against the Falcons is in the slot. We look at AJ Terrell and their outside corner coverage, pretty strong. And Allen Robinson only plays in the slot about 25% of snaps. So you look at that compared to 56% plus for Cooper Kupp. He's going to be seeing a lot of D Alford, and that is a matchup that you can absolutely expose. So give me who should be the leader in targets and potentially in yards this week at the receiver position, who's going to go kind of off the radar because he's really, really expensive.
I have so much to unpack right now. So first, I'm going to start with our viewing audience. Folks, if you're just now tuning in, thank you so much. This is going to be primarily a show focused on DFS. If you guys have DFS questions, please drop those in the chat. I will get them up on screen. If you're asking redraft questions, it's me answering them in the chat. So if you need somebody to blame me. But now let's get back to your answer. So first and foremost, love the Cooper Kupp take. And our good friend Jordan Vanek, I was reading his article this week. He mentioned Cooper Kupp will constantly be in his player pool. He'll never take Cooper Kupp out of his player pool. Whether you agree or disagree with paying up, Cooper Kupp belongs in the player pool. But you broke my heart, Eric. Destroyed my heart, Eric. No Allen Robinson rebound, man? What the hell? I guaranteed 2 touchdowns on our Wednesday show.
I mean,
I love the matchup you brought up. It's very interesting because I think well, let me just quickly throw out. I think every layman who looks at this game immediately thinks Terrell versus Kupp because Terrell gets brought up a lot. But you bring up that Kupp's going to be in the slot and Terrell's likely to be on the outside. And so it's very interesting that you brought that up because that's not the way a lot of people are spinning it right now. So I appreciate the conservative take there.
Yeah, I mean, look, Allen Robinson should have a better week in week 2 than he did in week number 1.
Have to, right?
Both in terms of productivity, but also I do think that they're going to try to find him more often than they did in that first week. But he has easily the worst matchup. And from what we've seen with Matt Stafford throughout his career, from what we've seen with Sean McVay in his relatively young head coaching career, they typically go to the matchups that can be exploited. And unfortunately for A-Rob, that's not this week. From a season long or a dynasty perspective, there are absolutely brighter days ahead. So if he has kind of a pedestrian week 2, which is kind of where I'm projecting him, he's absolutely a buy low target for me.
All right, Kyra, we're going to move over to your cash plays. And the reason I saved you for last is I assume you're going to change the first name on your cheap list, but let's talk about it.
Yeah, I guess I have to now because on my cheap list was Julio Jones, and he is out. I'm so sad about it.
Oh, did they announce it as out officially?
Yeah, he's officially out. So get him out of your lineups. Get him out of your DFS lineups if he was in there. So I have to pivot real quick, and I'm going to go with Greg Dortch. I know it's not sexy. It's not a name that you want to hear. It's really not. But for 3,500, I mean, last week he saw a 25% target share. Pretty damn good. And he's
I'm going to slow you down, Kyra. Let's remind the people who the hell Greg Dortch is. Greg Dortch is filling in for the Arizona Cardinals because they can't get a healthy body in their wide receiver room at this point.
Yeah, they are struggling.
Yeah,
he's basically taking over for like the Rondale Moore role. So last week, like I said, saw a 25% target share. Pretty damn good. That's not bad for Greg Dortch. And this week he's going to see Nate Hobbs in slot coverage, and he gave up 82.5% catch rate and a 94.3 passer rating last year, so he's not very good. I think that even being a dude named Greg Dortch, you are probably capable of beating him. And in a high over under, I just like that he could see that same kind of volume again. Could be a Marquise Brown week 2, but I mean, if you're looking to kind of like punt at the option there, I think that Greg Dortch, you could do much worse. So like Greg Dortch there. As for a mid-tier wide receiver, I can't stop putting Amon-Ra St. Brown in all of my cash lineups. He's just so good. I mean, he's dating back to even last year. And I said on the show with Jordan yesterday is I think that some people just don't give him the love that he deserves because he's a Detroit Lion and he's just stuck on a perennially bad team. But he's been a wide receiver 1 production ever since he started seeing more snaps last year. He's just so good, and he gets a really great matchup this week in what I think could be a shootout. I just don't see how I won't fit in Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I also even like the counterpart in that game is Terry McLaurin. I think that he's safe for cash. And I think even though he's going to be possibly low owned with his like kind of dud of a performance in comparison to Curtis Samuel and Jahan Dotson last week, I think Terry McLaurin has the best matchup out of all of them. And the Detroit secondary gives up tons of deep passes, and Terry McLaurin led his team last year in deep passing. And Carson Wentz, hero ball Carson Wentz, exactly. I can see Terry McLaurin having a really good game, and I like him for a bring back, in that game. So
I think my favorite part of week 1 was seeing the St. Brown brothers score essentially back-to-back touchdowns, Amon-Ra and then Equinemius. So that was very cool to see because they have the best names in the NFL, and then we get to see them back-to-back score touchdowns on red zones. That was fun.
I have a soft spot. I mean, when you watch Hard Knocks and you watch these guys like, Amon-Ra St. Brown said he has in memory everyone who was drafted before him and is like just out here to prove them wrong. Love that out of him, he's a beast. He's absolutely jacked. I don't know if anyone watches Hard Knocks. Amon-Ra St. Brown is just ripped to shreds. I feel like you can't tell that on the field for some reason, but dude's fucking yoked. But anyways,
named after the sun god.
Yeah, he is the sun god. Honestly, he's awesome. But my favorite cash play has to be Devonte Adams for the most expensive. Last week we seen him just get so heavily used. We were so worried that, he's not going to get peppered targets like Aaron Rodgers does. And, he's just the focal point of the Packers offense. You got to worry about Darren Waller and Renfro. it didn't matter because he literally, I mean, I know Derek Carr is Aaron Rodgers, but he fed him like he was. So I think that this game is perfect for Devonte Adams, sets him up really nice to have a super big week. And I know I touched on it in my article. His family is going to be at this game. Apparently, his grandparents have never seen him play professionally somehow after all these years. I don't know. I don't understand how this happens. Like,
4 touchdown game incoming.
You know what I mean? Like the narrative, if you want to paint the story, like you're going to play better in front of your family. Like you got to show off. You got to be like, yeah, grandma, you know, I know I've been one of the arguably best wide receivers in the league for several years now. You have not seen me play this game somehow. So, well, I'm sure she sees him play, but live, like, you know, it's just a different monster when you're facing the grandma model, you know? So we gotta go Devonte Adams. I'm gonna say, I know he's not on the show sheet, but we're gonna talk about him a little later. But I love Tyreek Hill also at an expensive. He's not even.
I'll say it goes back to Eric's Tua play as well. So
yeah, Tyreek Hill is 7,100 on DraftKings. Not too bad. That's less than most of the top elite wide receivers, and I think that he could have himself an absolute field day going up against a banged up Ravens secondary. So. Really like Tyreek Hill for a more expensive option.
Let's help a user with a quick flex question, guys. With Julio Jones no out, Rashad Penny, Travis Etienne, Curtis Samuel, PPR, DraftKings scoring.
I mean, obviously, we're just going to eliminate Julio Jones altogether. Don't love Rashad Penny. Going to eliminate him altogether. It's really in between Etienne and Curtis Samuel. I like Etienne to bounce back here. Probably would be my pick. I don't know that I want to rest everything on Curtis Samuel just yet, even though I do like the matchup. I'll go Travis Etienne.
Hey, Eric, you've already been talking Etienne up, so I can't imagine you pivot.
I chiseled down this list in the same way. There are 2 guys on here that I touted, but specifically in that context, I like the upside that Etienne offers.
Perfect. The last and probably most boring spot of most fantasy rosters is going to be the tight end position. And I keep this very simple for these guys. I ask them to give me a high dollar play and a low dollar play. I also know Kyra, and I know she prefers to punt on tight end altogether, but sometimes there are high dollar plays. So I give them the option to not give me a high dollar play. So Eric, let's jump into it. 1 high dollar play, 1 low dollar play. I know Kyra kind of stole your answers. So let's say this. Eric, give me your low dollar play right now. Then I'll let Kyra talk, and then you can give me your alternate high dollar play.
Okay. Yeah. So Kyra and I were yet again in lockstep in terms of our calls for the tight end position. My low dollar play is one of my favorite targets at tight end this week entirely. If you're talking DFS, if you're talking seasonal or redraft, I'm absolutely going in on Logan Thomas. He is a fantastic punt option, basically free all the way down there. Came back into the game last week from dealing with injury for the majority of 2021 and absolutely stepped right back into his role. He was on the field a ton, saw plenty of targets. So, you know, getting him down basically at 3K is something that I can certainly get behind if you're punting at the position. I'll let Kyra talk about our agreement on the high end. But my alternate play there, specifically in GPPs, is Kyle Pitts. All off season we talked about how, given his role in the offense, we're going to see regression swing in his favor, and he's going to start catching more touchdowns and seeing bigger yardage days. And unfortunately, week 1 was exactly what we saw in 2021. He was all over the field. He has a huge role in this offense. Fortunately, he didn't find his way into the box. So I think him sitting there at essentially 5.5K with guys like Darren Waller next to him or several, punt options below him, I think he'll go kind of overlooked, and he should be leaned on pretty heavily if the Falcons want to stay in this game against the Rams.
Perfect. And Kyra, you went with another high dollar play.
Yeah, well, obviously, Logan Thomas, I'm almost going him with most of my lineups just because, he had the 5th highest ADOT amongst tight ends last week. We know the ADOT always helps kind of navigate our way to fantasy points, and the Detroit Lions are very bad at defending tight ends, so love him for a little sneaky play. As far as my high dollar play, not a ton to talk about because we know Mark Andrews is Mark Andrews, and no matter the matchup, you'd be playing him. Not that his matchup is easy this week, but going up against the Miami Dolphins, who I think are going to score a ton of points on these Baltimore Ravens, Lamar's going to look for his blanket. He's going to look for one of his favorite targets, and it's going to definitely be Mark Andrews. So I just think he's a very safe play at tight end, especially because I really hate the tight end position this week. It's just there's really no clear-cut player that you really just want to be hammering into your lineups. I don't really particularly love anyone, but Mark Andrews is safe.
All right, now I want to fight with you guys. You guys have been agreeing with each other, and I know Josh hates every minute of it, but I have a problem with both of you right now.
Oh.
You've been telling me that Derek Carr and the Raiders are going to be a good play, and I know you both like Devonte Adams. The Cardinals just got beat the hell down by Travis Kelce, and neither one of you is recommending Darren Waller?
Yeah, Jordan did it in the show yesterday. He was all over Darren Waller. But for me,
I know who my favorite is now.
Well, something I mentioned, like for cash games, like it's not necessary to like double stack. Like that's not really because you don't need to get so unique. You know, you just kind of want to stay similar. It's just not necessary to be double stacking. So since I'm playing so much Devonte Adams, I just don't find it necessary to get Waller in there. Maybe if I wasn't using Devonte and I definitely want exposure to that game, getting Darren Waller in there is a great idea. There's nothing wrong with Waller this week.
Eric, what if, not me, but definitely me in a cash lineup I play with Fred, has Waller as my tight end one this week and Adams as my wide receiver one, and then was going to stack them with Carr? Is a triple stack advisable at this point, or a double stack, I guess, to use the proper terminology? So Kyra says she doesn't like it, but I'm playing in a very small pool, but only the top person is going to get any money. And I think they're both the best this week, so why would I not roll both of them, or should I roll both?
Yeah, if it's a winner take all format, I think you can make an argument for it. In general, I'm not a big fan of stacking in cash, right? So if you're playing a larger field or you're playing a circumstance where top 50% are just going to double up, I tend to stray away from. I mean, even single stacking is probably a bit outside of my comfort zone in that format. But if it's winner take all, I think you can make an argument for it. The reason why I'm not on Darren Waller, again, I kind of look at the tournament lens. Moreover, he's going to be very, very popular at 5.5K.
Okay, that's fair.
And he has a horrendous matchup against Isaiah Simmons of the Cardinals. Obviously, we saw Travis Kelce do Travis Kelce things, while Darren Waller is great. He's not Travis Kelce. Also, if I'm being entirely honest, I made the call to fade Kelce last week because of this Simmons matchup, and now I'm just kind of pot committed. It's still a tough matchup.
Just backing down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just my lane now. But yeah, it's a tough matchup. He's going to be popular. Anytime that's the case, usually I try to come in underweight.
All right. And then when you're filling out your DFS thing, probably the last thing you're putting in or the first thing you're putting in, depending on how you want to do it, is going to be the defense. Again, I keep it very similar to tight end. I ask these guys for two options. Sometimes it's low dollar, sometimes it's high dollar. Kyra, just go ahead and start with your defense.
Yeah, so with defense, I just try to kind of go down to the bottom of the barrel and figure out who's the cheapest defense I could shove in there and make it make sense. Just because with defenses, there's so many variables. There's so much variance going on with defense. Anything can swing a game. So I try not to get too expensive with my defense. And this one was just glaring at me, especially in cash games. This is going to be super chalky. Is the Bengals DST at 2,200 going up against the Dallas Cowboys-led Cooper Rush. I think that I really like them in this one. Not really much to explain there. It's just Cooper Rush, terrible offensive line right now. I think that it's pretty self-explanatory why you'd like the Bengals. But one that might kind of surprise people here is I really love the New Orleans Saints DST this week for 2,400 going up against the Buccaneers. One thing is history tends to repeat itself, and the Buccaneers and Tom Brady are not very good against the New Orleans Saints. For some reason, they just know how to be his kryptonite and shut him down. The Saints last week, I know that we were a little bit disappointed going up against Marcus Mariota, but one thing to notice about the Saints defense is they struggle against mobile quarterbacks and do a lot better against pocket passers. That's why Jalen Hurts has had their number over his short stint as well. So I wouldn't let last week be the reason you fade them this week, and I wouldn't say that what Brady's working with right now is great. I mean, Julio Jones is out. His offensive line is in absolute shambles. He's going to be trying to force feed Mike Evans, who plays absolutely terrible against Marshawn Lattimore. The matchup for them just isn't great. So I really love the New Orleans Saints as a cheap defense especially because I'm going to be fading like pretty much that whole game. So it's not like I'm going to have Mike Evans or Tom Brady in my lineup and have the Saints in there to like counteract. You know what I mean? So I love New Orleans Saints. I think they're a great option this week for DST.
Perfect. Eric, you gave us two different options.
Yeah. Not by choice though. The Bengals is very much so the correct answer at DST.
It's just kind of like the free.
Don't force anything. Like I said, I do have to let everybody know that you're allowed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's helpful to talk about other options, right? Because the Bengals are going to be incredibly popular. So finding a way to get different. What I will mention about Kyra's analysis that is absolutely spot on. Defenses basically are make or break on turnovers and opportunity to score. Yep. And anytime that you find yourself fading a team in your player pool, you should take a real good look at trying or considering rostering their defense. They're probably going to be very under-owned. They're probably going to be very cheap. So, as you get towards the bottom of the barrel, it's really kind of a roll of the dice as to whether or not they get a turnover and they score a touchdown. So you might as well, follow your own analysis and your own thinking and invest in the defense where you're already fading the team that they are opposing. So love that from like a roster construction and strategy standpoint. The two defenses that I wanted to talk about, I'm willing to go up this week to the Browns at $3,700. Yeah. First and foremost, defenses are all kind of cheap this week. Usually we have a couple that are floating, 4.4, 4.2K. To get the Browns defense, which is one of the better top to bottom units in the entire league, up against a Joe Flacco-led Jets team for $3,700. I'm happy to go all in on that.
Yes, please.
I mean, their offensive line is like shuffling around because it's all banged up and injured. They lost Mekhi Becton. Their rookie right tackle played awful. Like they're struggling on that line. So I think Myles Garrett is really going to get the best of them this week. I agree. I put them in my article, the Browns.
And then on the, I guess, kind of cheaper side, not opposed to going to the Steelers this week. If you watched any of that Miami-New England game, this offense looked absolutely lost. We heard reporting out of New England camp throughout the offseason that there were dead ends in the offense, some combination of two of the most incompetent coaches in NFL, recent NFL history. Judge and Patricia are splitting play calling duties. And if you watch that game, I mean, they were just laboring through even the most simplistic of offensive concepts, right? Like people were having to lay out and make incredible catches to like haul in like a 7-yard out. So this offense absolutely looks stuck in the mud. Mac Jones, while he doesn't carry an injury designation, is likely to be playing through some discomfort in his back. So happy to go with a very opportunistic Steelers defense that will probably be 2 or 3% rostered.
To quote our good friend Joel Worth, one of the writers for Club Fantasy, if your choice is between Matt Patricia and I blanked on the name. What's the other guy?
Joe Judge.
Joe Judge. There is no correct answer.
Right.
I mean, just gross.
Just surrender.
Just put Brian McAdoo in there too, and it's just the worst. Let's get them all
guys,
in there.
Guys, we still have a few minutes left. I want to remind everyone in the chat, thank you so much for tuning in. If you ask questions, it was me answering them, so you can blame me. And Vic, I'll get to your question here in a second. Guys, I have a couple of end of the show questions, and we have about 5 minutes to end the show. So if you guys want to be quick about this, Kyra, you actually have a fade this week. I like to tell people the story. Kyra hates that I asked them for a fade. Like, she asked me to get rid of it completely, and I just won't do it. So I put it as an optional question. But Kyra, you gave me a fade, and both of your fades are pretty big names. So Kyra, talk about yours, and then Eric, go ahead and give me yours.
It's because every time I would pick a fade, it would always come back to bite me.
I know why you hate it.
Yep. Oh God, I faded Tom Brady almost every single week, and it just here I go again. I really don't love the Buccaneers this week or the Saints players. I'm probably fading most of them except for really Leonard Fournette. I kind of like him in this week just because of how banged up that offensive line is. I think Brady's going to try to protect himself, and those easy dump off passes and layups to Leonard Fournette probably in favor. Plus, we just saw on Cordell Patterson just tear up the Saints rushing defense last week. Just super outlier. I think Leonard Fournette a little bit better than Cordell Patterson. So he's the only one I'm okay with. Otherwise, I'm probably fading most people from that game. I know he likes Michael Thomas, but I just think it's going to be a low scoring, just defensive matchup that I don't want part of.
That makes sense. Eric, you have another one for us, which makes sense.
I do. And before I get into that, Kyra, I feel the exact same way about fades. Like anytime I put that juju on someone's name, they just go nuts. One of my favorite things to do, I'll reserve like 3 or 4 seats in like the $3 $1.5 million pool and just build out some all fade rosters. Just everyone that I said fade, I'm just gonna throw $3 on, right? So that way when they go nuts, I can at least hedge a little bit. But it always happens. For me, it's CeeDee Lamb. He's sitting up there essentially at 7K, 6.9K. And while I think his volume is still relatively intact, he's going to see a lot of looks this week. They're not going to be nearly as far downfield. The Cowboys are not going to be scoring nearly as many points. So his path to paying off, 18-point floor in cash or higher in GPP is just really limited relative to his price tag.
All right. And then, guys, you both gave me stacks. Let's be quick about it because I want to get you guys out of here so we can set lineups. Kyra, give me your favorite triple stack or bring back or anything this week.
Like I said, I don't really love to double stack. Definitely not going to triple stack in cash, but I'm just all over the Washington-Detroit game. I think it's really easy to stack and bring back. Love Wentz with McLaurin, or even you could go Wentz and Curtis Samuel. And then I love to bring back with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Also love DJ Chark as another option. He had a really good involvement last week, and I think that he could do it again. So if you could get any exposure to that game, that's where I'd be going for sure.
Perfect. And Eric?
Love the McLaurin call in GPP specifically.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to go overlooked. And I already talked about my triple stack. Love firing up Tua, Hill, and Waddle with a Mark Andrews run back.
Yes.
Absolutely perfect. Well, guys, that is going to be the end of the show. First and foremost, Eric, we did it at the top of the show. Let's do it again at the end of the show. Tell everybody where they can find your work and all the great stuff you're working on right now.
Yeah, all of my work rolls up into my Twitter account at FantasyNav. And if you are interested in learning more about the Charity League or potentially opening up your heart and your wallet, you can go to our website, proswithjoes.com, or follow us on Twitter at proswithjoes.
Perfect. And Kyra, any parting words for the people?
If you have the time, please go check out my article over on the 33rd team to set your cash game lineups. There's something I wanted to say. What the hell was it? Of course, blanking right now. I don't know. I forget. It was important. I'll let Twitter know.
There you go. I say, make sure you're following these people. Both of these guys put such great content out. Eric, I can't thank you enough. What a great show this was. Folks, if you're not following Club Fantasy, you need to be following Club Fantasy. We do articles every single day of the week, or a show every single day of the week. We have DFS matchup reports, DFS articles, betting articles, start sit articles. I'm not going to name them all. I'm not going to name all the authors. You need to be following Club Fantasy. We share all of our work on our Twitter handle, and you can check us out at Club Fantasy FFL, and the website is clubfantasyffl.com. You also need to sub to the YouTube for a number of different reasons. On top of a show damn near every day of the week, and we're even covering IDP this year. We have a show on Saturdays strictly focused to your start sit questions that you guys have been dropping in the chat, and that's all they talk about for the entire show. But every time we hit subscriber milestones, we give away stuff. And our founder, Josh Hudson, said we're going to do another one. We just gave away a Deebo Samuel jersey at 400. We're giving away another jersey at 450, which we're already pushing to. So if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And the last thing I'm going to tell you guys about is, if I've given you great start sit advice, you can also partner with me on Connect Go. If you are not familiar with Connect Go, links are in the description. Is available on Apple and Android. And what you're able to do is partner with some of your favorite fantasy analysts. We are able to set up text chats or even video calls where we talk about your lineups, your waivers, your trades, any single thing that you want to talk about. We are here to help you with. And as I mentioned, the links are in the description. I'm on there. Stepmom Lauren's on there. There are a bunch of folks on there. And before I hit the end broadcast button, Kyra, you're going to end the show with what you remember to tell us.
Yes. Okay. So I've been trying to forget this, I guess, but I'm going to be starting video content also as well. Just giving you a couple of my quick targets and fades for cash games. I will say video content is so much harder than anyone. They all deserve all the credit in the world. It is so hard to not look like an idiot while giving out information that you need to not stumble and stammer while talking about, and get the camera right. The whole thing is just a major production. So bear with me, but I would like to be able to get that out next week. We're going to be having on the 33rd team's TikTok and Instagram reels is where you'll find me. So look out for that.
That's awesome. So make sure you're following the 33rd team there as well. Guys, you got about an hour. Inactives are about to drop, so go get those lineups all set and ready to go. We thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day.